3 months until the end of the year, and the list of horror films releasing over the next few months has been crazy. There are 15 films coming out this year, and I'm excited to watch almost every single one of them. If I had more time, I'd probably just go on and on about all these horror films and how excited I am. But I'm not going to waste your time. I'm just going to get to the films that are coming out. First up is Good Boy. I like dogs. I love dogs. So when the trailer for Good Boy came out, I was psyched. Here's a horror film in which a dog is the central and probably only character. I loved it. The plot of the film goes something like this. A brave dog must battle supernatural forces as it threatens the dog's human companion. But Good Boy doesn't look like a big budget film. It doesn't look like a medium budget film. It looks like a low budget affair. And that has me worried a bit. But worried or not, this film is about a dog, so I'm going to go and watch the film and I'm going to like it. I first heard that Coyotes was a film about a bunch of wild coyotes that go out and start killing people. The story frankly seemed bleh, and I wasn't really interested in it. But then I heard that Justin Long was starring in the film, so I watched the trailer and it's a funny film. A family gets stuck trying to battle a raging wildfire on one hand and a pack of savage coyotes on the other. And along the way, we get a bunch of hilarious situations and nail-biting sequences. I now want to watch this film really because it looks good. Bone Lake looks like a straightforward horror film in which a couple goes to a huge estate to spend a weekend or something, and it turns out they're double booked with another couple. So these couples, they decide to spend the weekend together, and then shit gets weird. There's blood, there's knives, there's arrows and axes and all kinds of deadly things. Bone Lake isn't the kind of film I'd normally find interesting, but I'm really fascinated by the trailer for some reason. I don't know if it's the way the film is shot or the way the actors all act or what. I'm really fascinated by it. Dakota Fanning stars in Vicious, in which she gets a box that demands 3 things from her. Something you need, something you hate, something you love. And a limited amount of time in which to get all these things and put them in the box. If she doesn't put all these things in the box, or if she attempts to tell anyone else of what's happening to her, something terrible happens, either to her or to the people around her. This looks like a pretty good horror film with a fairy tale twist, the 3 things that have to be put in the box. Also, an old woman comes and gives her the box and also the curse, and this old woman, she's kind of creepy. Everything about this situation is sort of unsettling. And what happens after Dakota Fanning gets the box, the trials she must face, they all seem very interesting. The first Black Phone film was, well, sort of underwhelming. Sure, I was somewhat tense watching the film, but ultimately nothing really terrified me, except the idea of little kids being kidnapped and ultimately killed. In the second installment of the film Black Phone 2, the kid from the first film, the one who was kidnapped, goes to this snowy camp of some sort where he starts getting signs from the other side of Ethan Hawke coming back from the dead. In fact, after a while, Ethan Hawke actually comes back from the dead and he starts doing these horrible things to our hero's sister. I wasn't that thrilled with how the first film played out, but the trailer for the second film looks really kick-ass. Shelby Oaks apparently was written and directed by YouTuber Chris Stuckman. That should give me pause. YouTubers aren't necessarily the best or even adequate filmmakers. But from what I've heard online and from the trailer, this looks like a tense horror film that's now raised my curiosity. I want to watch this film and find out what it's about. A woman comes across a tape of her missing sister, and the tape leads the woman to possibly where her sister may be. Along the way, the woman runs into a series of unsettling situations involving a creepy woman, some psychic forces maybe, and something hidden in the darkness. Yeah, I know that's rather vague and not scary at all, but if you watch the trailer, it leaves you feeling unsettled with a sense of dread deep inside of you. So I've changed my mind about Shelby Oaks and I'm really looking forward to this film. Queens of the Dead is a hokey-looking horror comedy about a zombie outbreak. A bunch of drag queens and our hero fight the zombie horde while the hero's wife is stuck in a hospital somewhere surrounded by a zombie horde as well. It seems like a pretty standard zombie film plot. And while it has some notable actors I've liked when they've appeared in other shows and films, I don't like how the film looks. There are zombies, sure. Zombies are the best thing to come out of the horror genre. But that's not really enough to keep me interested in a film. What is interesting for me is the fact that Tina Romero wrote and directed the film. Tina Romero, if you didn't already know, is George Romero's daughter. And that's reason enough for me to watch the film and like it. I don't particularly like anthology films, and I like series films like VHS even less. So VHS Halloween wasn't something I was looking forward to. Add to the fact that I watched older iterations of the VHS franchise and I've been somewhat fatigued. But then I watched the trailer for this film, and now I can't wait to watch the thing. VHS Halloween features 6 short tales of horror. I know I'm going to dislike at least 3 of these films, but I'm still excited about the film. I don't know why, and I blame how weirdly wired our brains are to make me think this way. I watched previous iterations of the Predator films, and I've loved every single one of them. From the Arnold Schwarzenegger one that came out back in 1989 to the Shane Black film released in 2018. Yeah, I know a lot of people have hated the newer films, but I love them. And I'm certain I'm going to love Predator Badlands 2, which comes out in the final quarter of this year. From what I can tell, the film has an android of some sort aiding a predator who's been cast out to hunt a being that cannot be killed. It looks exciting. The trailer to the film looks exciting. It doesn't necessarily look like a horror film, more like a science fiction film really. But traditionally, Predator films are horror films, so maybe this one will be a horror as well. I've never really thought Frankenstein was an interesting tale, although I've never thought it was uninteresting either. But Guillermo del Toro is releasing a Frankenstein film later this year, and I think I'm going to enjoy the film quite a bit. There isn't anything terribly innovative he's doing with the story as far as I can tell, but the film looks quite striking. The visuals, the tone, the actors, everything makes me believe this is going to be a good film. Osgood Perkins brings yet another horror film, The Keeper, which seems like a rather unusual horror film in that the film only has 2 actors and perhaps one evil entity that isn't human. I can't really tell much about the film because the trailer is rather vague and the description on IMDb tells me very little. So on the one hand, I'm sort of waiting for the film because it's an Osgood Perkins film. On the other, I'm uncertain because the premise seems rather empty. The animatronic dolls from Five Nights at Freddy's return in Five Nights at Freddy's 2. When they make contact with Abby using some kind of toy. Our heroes from the first film, Mike, Abby's brother, and the police officer Vanessa are pulled into this mess too as the dolls begin their killing spree again. I wasn't very impressed with the first Freddy film because it was a terrible adaptation. But this trailer looks interesting, although a lot of films have great trailers and that isn't necessarily an indication of how good these films are going to be. So I'm not holding my breath. The film can surprise me by actually being good. If it's bad, no skin off my back. Dust Bunny is classified as a horror film, but the trailer doesn't have any elements of a horror film. The film, however, features Mads Mikkelsen, Sigourney Weaver, and David Dastmalchian. I don't know what his name is, but it features all 3 of these actors, and they're all great actors, and I can't wait to see this film. More importantly, the film actually has a pretty good story. A little girl asks her hitman neighbor to help her find the monsters that killed her family. I don't know what it is about little kids asking big bad men to help them out in their quests, but I love this trope, and I'm almost entirely certain I'm going to love Dust Bunny. The Anaconda film has a rather unusual past in that there were 4 sequels made of the original film, and out of the 5 films that have been released so far, I have watched and heard of exactly 1 film, the original. The 6th film, though, seems to be a meta-comedy that turns the original film into a piece of pop culture that exists within the 6th film. Our heroes Jack Black and Paul Rudd and Steve Zahn are filmmakers who sink all their money into this film and they set about remaking Anaconda. They travel to the Amazonian forests, I'm assuming, and start filming. Except things go south when a real-life anaconda arrives at the scene and threatens to eat each and every one of these filmmakers. The film looks like a lot of fun and seems to be a lot more interesting than the original 1997 film. The last film on my list is an Indian film called Thama. Thama, if you didn't already know, is a film about vampires. It stars Ayushmann Khurrana, Nawazuddin Siddiqui and Paresh Rawal, and the plot goes something like this. Ayushmann Khurrana is a newly turned vampire who falls in love with his fellow vampire, Rashmika Madan, who falls in love with him as well. There are problems between the lovers. There are problems with Ayushmann Khurrana's family. And there are problems when Nawazuddin Siddiqui's character, a vampire, enters the picture. I was quite excited about the film because this was the next installment of the Madak universe, which has 3 Bhedia and Munjia. I've been a fan of the three films, the other two films not so much, but I like the idea of having a universe inhabited by monsters, both good and bad. But after watching the trailer, I'm having second thoughts. I'm not entirely certain I like the film, so I'll set my expectations low and go watch the film. That's all the horror films expected to come out this quarter. Which films are you most excited about? Let me know, and I will see you next time. Bye bye.